Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to our lecturer. My name is Elham Sabrina binti Muhammad Mukhtarisha and my group members are Aina Nasha binti Muhammad Rizwan, Wafa Shukrina binti Nur Aziz, Nur Aina Nadia binti Muhammad Zohir, and Siti Ainisa binti Osman. We are from Group 2 who would like to present about idealism theory.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Aina Nasha binti Muhammad Rizwan. Firstly, the introduction of idealism theory. What is the main idea of idealism theory? Most of the time, the term idealism is used to describe an idea, a goal or a practice that people think is not realistic. It is the act of coming up with ideals or attempting to live up to them. Or it can refer to something that has been idealized. Okay, there is no clear definition of what idealism is. Realist intellectuals in particular often use this word as a term against radical or reformist views, with which they disagree in order to show their disapproval. Okay, next, the background of the idealism theory. In the 19th century, European systems centered their policies on the balance of power in order to maintain the status quo, where they attempt to maintain permanent peace in order to ensure the continuity of Europe's great powers. Okay, besides that, despite the fact that idealism evolved after World War I, there were power voids generated by the newly constituted administration. Okay, perpetual peace, on the other hand, did not stand the test of time. Okay, this arrangement has generated every potential of World War II scenario. Also, there was a dominance of views focusing on understanding the causes of war and how to avoid it between the 1920s and 1930s. Okay, some even question the necessity of war prevention, since idealism is founded on the theme of war and peace, which is, in essence, the most important subject in international affairs. And it emphasizes the building of an ideal world order. Next, idealism in terms of international relations. Okay, following the devastation of World War I, idealism find ways to end war and improve peace by forming institutions based on international law, standards, and diplomacy. Okay, this is because they saw the international institution as a way to promote the ideals of peace and security among states. According to Woodrow Wilson, the former president of the United States, international institutions that manage international relations are essential to keep the peace. As we know, idealism is based on preserving international peace and cooperation between states to trade. Also, the other ways of establishing the main order at the international level where there is no such institution to regulate states act. Okay, the years between the war have a lot to do with idealism. It was the most common way of looking at the world in the early days of the study of international relations. It was mostly about how the world is getting more and more connected and how the League of Nations was an experiment in internationalism. Okay, idealists stress how important it is for international bodies like the League of Nations and the United Nations to unite and organize public opinion around the world.
I will present about the main features of idealism theory and also discuss whether it's still relevant in international relations. In idealism theory, human nature is essentially good and capable of good deeds in international relations. It can be relevant because each of international relations happen have their own purpose and objective. For example, countries with veto power such as United States and Russia conduct international relations in order to increase their powers. Next, human welfare and the advancement of civilization are the concern of all. It's still relevant until today because some of the countries are agreed to protecting human welfare, such as UNICEF that involving 190 countries to protect children. In terms of advancement of civilization, Japan usually is pointed out when it comes to its development and high technology. The third feature is bad human behavior is the product of bad environment and institution. It was relevant because some of the country are so comfortable with their existing environment that drive them to be greedy in something. For example, countries with veto power are become greedy to have more power because they are get used to using their power for their benefit. Next, by reforming the environment, bad human behavior can be eliminated. It was not relevant because the environment depends on several factors that will affect it, which is we cannot control it. For example, the need to increase country power, so it is not easily to be suppressed. The fifth feature is war represents the worst feature of relation. It was relevant because war will result in more losses than gains. For example, Malaysia having independence with consultation with British, which is not involved war. The next feature is by reforming international relations, war can be ended and should be eliminated. It was relevant, as I said before, Malaysia dependence are being done with consultation. Next, global efforts are needed to end war, violence and tyranny from international relations. It was not relevant because each of the countries have their own interests. Although the efforts are being made, it cannot be easily to be implemented in all countries. For example, in Spratly Island conflict, China was breaking the UN rule. However, no one are there to taking action against them. Second last feature, international community should work for eliminating such global instruments, features and practices which lead to war. It was not relevant because the power acquired by each country are different. This is because the country with less power cannot taking action against the country with more power. Last feature is international institution committed to preserve international peace, international law and order should be developed to secure peace, prosperity and development. It was not relevant because the powerful country are dominating the world. It made the less powerful country are incapable to do anything to the country that have more power.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Siti Anisa. NEC is the parties involved that have three important events in idealism, which is the 14-point League of Nations and Treaty of Versailles that related to each other. As we know, idealism emerged after World War I, which idealist intellectuals offer ideas like organization free from the government in international relations. Firstly, that 14 point that is introducing by Woodrow Wilson. Wilson is American president that came out with the 14 points. The purpose is outlining a strategy for ending war and the basis for peace negotiation at the end of World War I in January 8, 1918. This was drafting by Sidney Edward Mezes, Walter Lippmann, Isaiah Bowman, and David Hunter Miller. Wilson's 40 points were designed to undermine the central power to continue and inspire the Allies to victory. At the same time, Wilson stated that the world must be made fit and safe to live in and made safe for every peace-loving nation like our own, be assured of justice and fair to people of the world as against force and selfish aggression. Let's see the 14 points summarized. 1. Open diplomacy without secret treaties. 2. Economic free trade on the sea during war and peace. 3. Equal trade condition. 4. Decrease armament among all nations. 5. Adjust colonial claim. 6. Evacuation of all central power from Russia and allow it to define its own independence. 7. Belgium to be evacuated and restored. 8. Return of Alsace-Lorraine region and all French territories. 9. Readjust Italian border. 10. Austria-Hungary to be provided an opportunity for self-determination. 11. Redraw the border of the Balkan region, creating Romania, Serbia and Montenegro. 12th, creation of a Turkish state which guarantee free trade in the Dardanelles. 13th, creation of an independent police state. 14th, creation of the League of Nations. In other way, Wilson 14 points play an essential role in the world politics over the next several years. After that, the event that was involved in idealism is the League of Nations. The League of Nations is an organization for international diplomatic group that have purpose to settle dispute between countries and improve welfare. Moreover, the primary goal of the League was to foster international cooperation in order to promote international peace and security. The League of Nations has its origin in the 14 points by Wilson. The establishment of the League of Nations was an idea shared by England and France. Woodrow Wilson, David Elliott George, and George Carmichael are idealists that involved in the League of Nations. Furthermore, the League was successful in resolving issues such as Greece's attack on Bulgaria in the 1920s and the wider conflict between Turkey and Iraq and many other disputes solved by the League of Nations. However, this organization founded on idealisms that overlap with American national interests. Moreover, the Treaty of Versailles that was signed in June 1919 at the Palace of Versailles in Paris. The Treaty of Versailles was led by Big Four leaders from United States, Great Britain, France, and Italy. They have competing objectives in Paris respectively. The purpose was to codify peace terms between the victorious Allies and Germany. In the end, the Treaty of Versailles blamed Germany for starting the war and imposed harsh penalties such as territorial loss, massive reparation payment, and demilitarization. Far from the peace without victory that was highlighted by Wilson in his famous 14 points, where the Treaty of Versailles humiliated Germany while failing to address the underlying issue that had led to the war in the first place. Thus, Germany enabled in the spread of ultra-nationalist sentiment which led to the rise of Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party, as well as the outbreak of World War II only 2 decades later.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Suggestion or recommendation to ensure idealism can be continued. The first one is a country with a great power need to abolish the nature of hegemony. This is because the international relations principle is to build a good relations between countries. When there is hegemony or one great power in international relation, the balance of power will not be achieved and it will affect the small countries. For example, the conflict between the United States and Iran has had an impact on Malaysia and the world. Critical realism states that this relationship between the United States and Iran is a common occurrence in the international political arena that is constantly racing to improve their capabilities of their respective countries. But it is actually showing their selfishness because it has impacted other countries. This conflict has been caused by the disruption of daily life in Malaysia with the occurrence of rising fuel prices due to disruption of oil and gas production, rising food prices due to unsustainable trade which leads to food shortage. Hence, with this idea, if the world power countries like the United States, China and Russia does not value its hegemony as a world superpower, the international relationship will be harmonious and will get a better life. The second one is equal right for every country. Equal right to every country for big countries as well as small countries, such as equal right to decide, to speak and to vote. For example, in United Nations, the right to vote and be elected is genuine, held by veto power. Among the main factors causing the United Nations to fail to function properly is because it is still seen to be dominated by world powers such as the United States, Russia, the United Kingdom, France, and China. These 5 countries can use their veto power to block any proposal or draft resolution submitted through the Security Council of the organization. Thus, with the idea of equal right, this can help maintain international peace, social progress, and a better life for every country. The last one is doctrine in the United Nations need to be followed and complied with by all countries in the organizations. United Nations doctrine is preserving international peace and security, defending a small country, respecting the independence of a country. This doctrine need to be understood and followed by all nations. This matter, there can be no country that follow and does not follow. For example, the issue of Palestine. One of the failures of the United Nations was in relation to the illegal Israel occupation of the Palestinian territories, and the World Organization seemed to ignore the voice of the majority of the international community. In addition, if all the doctrine highly regarded and followed by all nations, all applicable discrimination can be overcome.
Assalamualaikum, I am Elham Sabrina binti Muhammad Mukhtarisha. In conclusion, idealism concerns the importance of ideas, morals, and aspirations in the mind rather than material objects. In other words, the way of thinking according to ideas, not the physically objective or reality word. This is because in idealism, the mind is considered as the central core that develops its own law and dwells upon itself. Practicing idealism will stimulate people to be extraordinary, adhere to principles they believe in, and even uphold their ideas and honor. However, in terms of international relations, idealism stands for keeping world peace, safe and prosperous from any violence from international relations. Thus, we hope that this idealism continues to be practiced to create a world free and a better life for everyone. That's all from us. Thank you.